Best.Podcast.Ever is sponsored by the Gertsburg Law Firm, a full-service business law firm in Cleveland and Chagrin Falls that's changing the way businesses retain their attorneys. Go to gertsburglaw.com to learn more. While you're there, check out Cover My 6, a complete legal audit of the 6 areas that most often create or prevent business lawsuits and government investigations. Go to covermy6.com to learn how we keep you safe. Enjoy the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to listen to the best podcast ever recorded.
I would advise anyone who has that entrepreneurial drive to act on it, and the sooner the better. I really wish, I am so loving having my own companies now, running them. I wish I had done it 30 years ago.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's a special day here in the history of the best podcast ever, because we have here in the best podcast ever studios that are also the where all the magic happens at the Gertsburg Law Firm. We have one Michael E. Stanek. Mike, what's the E stand for?
Edwin.
Edwin.
You don't hear that often.
No, you sure don't.
It's after my great uncle.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm assuming Edwin is no longer with us.
Correct. He has passed. He was an awesome individual. He and his wife could not have children. When my mother was born, her mother died from childbirth complications, and so my great aunt and uncle raised my mom for the first 3 or 4 years of her life.
Wow. And so, if Edwin in the other world is listening right now, he's listening to the best podcast ever as we talk about him.
Perfect.
Yeah, there you go, Edwin. You're welcome. A little plug for you. Michael Stanek, co-owner and CFO of Hunt Imaging and president of Cleveland Cycle Tours. I would say those are 2 of the 30 hats that we know you are either currently wearing or have recently worn. Is that fair?
Try to have my fingers involved in a few things until they catch on to me and throw me out.
Yeah. Well, it is busy. You've led a busy life. I was just saying to you how our crack research staff of one has uncovered pages worth of a CV for you here,
and pictures.
Pictures. That's right. Which now everybody will see. But so here's what I was thinking, Mike. I was thinking that we could probably put this interview into maybe 2 or 3 good buckets.
Okay.
One is the entrepreneurial bucket, because you've bought companies, started companies, sold companies, I think.
No, still holding on to everything.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
No, I haven't sold anything yet.
You've bought and built, right?
Correct.
And managed employees. You have advised, certainly in your capacity as chairman of the COSE board and in all the other organizations dedicated to helping small businesses. You've been there. You've helped them. So there's the entrepreneurial hat. Then you've done a lot with medical marijuana lately, and I don't mean smoking it. I'm talking about advocating for it, educating about it.
I appreciate the clarification.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's important. I'm sure a lot of people will wonder, but I want to definitely talk about that. And so let's start with the entrepreneurial hat. You're running 2 businesses now. Are they the first 2 businesses that you were involved in?
Actually, there's 4 right now.
Oh, are there 4?
Actually, yeah, which is fine.
Our crack research staff.
One you wouldn't know about. One is just condominium rentals.
Okay.
My wife and I have some properties in Westlake and Avon Lake, and most recently Naples, Florida, that we own, rent out. So that they wouldn't find out about
All
that
right.
one.
Well, that's a business. That counts.
It is.
Yeah.
And then on the toner company, Hunt Imaging, we've acquired a second toner company just this past October in Wheeling, West Virginia. in northern part of Wheeling, called Prime Media Products. So that's the second toner company that we're operating, and vertical integration for us. We're manufacturing the toner here in Berea, Ohio, to ship down to Wheeling for them to package and send off to their markets.
Which is that nationwide?
Worldwide.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a smaller operation, but they do sell worldwide and into the desktop market, whereas Hunt Imaging is more into the high-speed printer market.
Got it. That you've been at the helm of Hunt Imaging for a bit now, right?
Well, we've owned it just since April of 2017, but I've been the CFO there since it went private initially in 1996, and I had been there prior to that from 1985.
1985?
Correct.
Okay, so that company's been around.
Yeah.
How big a company is it right now?
24 employees, two shift operation. We're a Teamster facility, so we get to deal with all of the negotiating and all the different multi-employer pension plan challenges and all of that as well. But yeah, we run two shifts and sell to some manufactured toner for companies like Xerox and Kodak and OSE, some of the big boys.
So this has really been your main job pretty much since college, is what I'm hearing.
Correct.
And did I hear you say something about taking the company private? Was it ever a public company?
Yes, Olin was a public company. They were a Fortune 200 company. They bought Philip A. Hunt, which I think had been a public company at the time, and so we were all part of this Fortune 200 company. Yeah. And then they spun it off into a privately held entity in 1996.
I see. Wow, so you've really seen the company in so many different forms, right?
Absolutely.
So you've been a co-owner and a CFO of the company. Is that is CFO your primary title today?
Yeah, I mean I handle pretty much all the operations out here in Berea. My business partner lives up in New Hampshire. He's the president. I'm CFO. He handles all the sales and marketing and the R&D, and I handle everything out here.
So having watched this company evolve in 30 years, almost 40 years now, Mike Stanek of 25 years ago is sitting at this chair right here. What do you tell him about the years to come? What to expect, what to do differently?
For me, from 25 years ago?
Talking to your younger business self.
Yeah, it's interesting, but, there were a number of times in those intervening years where I wondered if I should have taken a different route. I had always had an entrepreneurial drive, and there's always that challenge of when's the right time to act on that. And it's kind of like the old question, when's the right time to have a baby? Well, probably never. You just kind of have to decide to do it.
Yeah.
And so I would have, whether it was this business or another business, I would advise anyone who has that entrepreneurial drive to act on it, and the sooner the better. I really wish, I am so loving having my own companies now, or running them. I wish I had done it 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And some regret that I didn't, but certainly there were a lot of things that occurred over those years that allowed me to provide, a solid lifestyle for my family, et cetera, and allowed me to grow as an individual. So maybe success would have been different, if I had jumped in earlier. But I really wish I had done it earlier.
Yeah, I always tell clients that walk through this door and have me form a company for them or do a financing or something like that so that they can stop working for someone else, that once you start working for yourself in some form, you can keep your day job, but starting a business, once you do that, it changes the wiring that you've got in your brain. I'm convinced of it. You go from a risk-reward calculation that you've always had and probably your whole life, that your parents taught you, that you go to work, you keep your head down, you do a good job, and you get that paycheck, you save up for retirement, you pay your bills, you're a good American citizen, right? Once you decide you're going to start a business, your wiring goes from that calculus to, okay, I'm now going to take less security but unlimited upside. I'm going to have more risk in my life. That's the security piece. But there's going to be so much more upside that I can get for myself. And more importantly, I'm now an owner. I'm now totally responsible for what happens in this organization. And that changes the wiring, I think, too.
It does. And I think I've, for a long time, operated the business, for the absentee owner that we had prior, really operated it with an entrepreneurial mindset of my own. I treated every penny as if it were mine, even though it wasn't. But it does change. I am constantly looking and thinking now of, okay, what ancillary business can I add on? How can I make this better? How can I make it different? How can I make it more secure? And that security factor now is something that I take a lot of personal responsibility for my employees, because I have a lot of employees. I started hiring my number of my employees through Towards Employment, which is an organization that helps reintegrate former felons into the workforce. And so these are folks that can have a difficult time finding a landing spot. And so we've been able to provide a landing spot for them, and 90% of the time it's worked great. But for them to pick up and have to start over again somewhere would be tough. And so it's, I take it upon myself to make sure that they've got an ongoing future there. And
that's awesome that you do that.
It's been very rewarding, and the fact that they have been extremely appreciative has just really added to that. But again, you just want to always make things better. You don't know that we're ever satisfied. At least I'm never satisfied.
Have you, over the last 40 years, evolved your mindset about failing and about risk-taking in your business? You mentioned security just now, and making the business more secure, but mistakes you've made, how you dealt with them in the past and how you deal with them now, has that mindset evolved at all?
Probably. I mean, I'm fortunate to be in a place where I can take on additional risk without having to worry about it putting me back to step one. And so I think I'm more willing, and I've seen the benefit of added investment into a business, how it can really help a business to grow, whether it be additional dollars into marketing or additional dollars into new product development or what have you. And, once your balance sheet reaches a certain stage, it's a lot easier to do those additional investments.
Yeah. What were some ideas that could have used a little more time to bake? Can you remember some times when it seemed great in your head, and then when you rolled it out, it was just a little too cockamamie?
Specifically with the toner business?
Sure.
Well, we were working for quite some time under the prior ownership and into our ownership on a micro inkjet product, and we were really attempting to blaze a new trail there, taking nanoparticles of iron and trying to suspend them in a liquid that would maintain suspension and jet out through the nozzles on an inkjet print head, and carry with it the magnetic properties needed for it to be read by a check reader. Mm-hmm. We worked on that for a long time. We had NASA scientists, thanks to Magnet, the local manufacturing organization. We had some NASA scientists that helped us try to work through some of the hurdles that we were running up against. And we spent way too much time and money running into dead ends for no end result.
How did you know when it was time to pull out?
I guess when we finally realized, the thing that I tell people: if you keep doing what you've been doing, you keep getting what you've been getting. And we kept getting poor results, and nothing was changing. Nothing of significance was changing. But we kept being told and kept believing that, something different was right around the corner. We just finally reached a frustration point and felt that we could spend those dollars in another avenue, like acquiring the business that we did in October, and make some real progress.
How are you going about finding acquisition targets? Do you have an investment banker or?
No, doing it on our own. It's
okay.
a fairly small fraternity of companies, and so we're doing the reach outs and making the inquiries ourselves.
Got it. When I think toner, I think paper. When I think paper, I think email. So you've been in the printing business effectively, or in some component of the printing business, since before there was email.
Yes.
So how has the trajectory of businesses and people becoming more and more paperless affected your business, and how do you see that going?
That in and of itself has not seemed to impact us that greatly. There's so many people that love to print their emails or print attachments that they get with their emails. There's still a lot of printing that takes place. And so I don't know that in and of itself has impacted us. The change to inkjet certainly has. And with our main niche being the microtoner for check printing, certainly the less use of checks has been a big issue for us. No one under 30 has probably ever written a check.
Yeah. Right. It's all Apple Pay and PayPal.
Oh yeah, Venmo and all of that, which is great for them, but it doesn't help us.
Yeah. Is there any other future proofing that is going on in your mind, though? I mean, is the prospect of businesses going more and more paperless something that you think about, or?
No, not really. More of our time we spend on trying to figure out what ancillary type operations we can bring in to take over the losses that we're seeing from other technology.
Yeah, got it. Okay, so you've got this entrepreneurial drive that just wasn't quite being completely satisfied at Hunt Imaging, and so you went out there and decided, I think I'm going to buy this other business. Talk about the Cleveland Cycle Tours. What was the germ of the idea that spawned the tree that became this business for you?
Yeah, and it's a very interesting story, actually. And Cleveland Cycle Tours is a company that we started in 2012, really got up and running in 2013. We had one of our sons. We have my wife and I have 4 boys and a girl. One of our sons had a summer internship with Target in Minneapolis, and while he was up there, he saw these group party bikes. They call them pedal pubs up there. Mm-hmm. He saw them operating, and called my wife and I and said, "Boy, Mom and Dad, you should look at this for Cleveland. It's a riot." And my wife and I looked into it and saw what it was, and said, boy, if this can work in Minneapolis, where it's colder in the winter than it is in Cleveland, we should be able to make a go of it here. So we went and did some research on where we could get the bikes, chose a manufacturer out in Bend, Oregon, and ordered up a bike sight unseen. Had never seen their product. $50,000 purchase, and ordered it, and then thought, boy, we better get to work on finding a garage where we can keep this thing. And the process just took off from there. The idea for the bikes originated in the Netherlands, and they were all over Europe. And this one company in Minneapolis was the first company to bring them over here to the States. And they have, it's not really a franchise, it's more of a licensing arrangement where they sell the bikes to companies and help them set up their website tied in with theirs, etc. But we just went out on our own and did it ourselves. We didn't do it through them or through their particular model. We bought our bikes from this aerospace manufacturer up in Oregon.
Let's paint a picture for everyone here. So I'm driving down the street. I'm on 9th Street, and I look to my right the other day, and there's what am I seeing here? Is it 10 people?
15.
15 people facing each other in a canopied yellow. Is it yellow?
Silver. Silver and blue. Gray and blue.
Silver. I don't know why I was thinking yellow. I do know. It's the yellow boat taxis.
Yes.
Those are or not the taxis. Those are also pedal deals.
Correct.
That's not that. We're talking about on the roads. So it's the silver 15-person bar on wheels that you see pedaling through downtown mostly, but I guess also it's pretty much anywhere in the greater Cleveland area.
Yeah,
right?
we operate in Ohio City, Tremont, downtown, and now in Kent also.
And business is good?
Business has been solid.
Yeah.
And we just opened in Kent last year, and we actually have a second type of bike also, which we are purchasing from the Netherlands. They're round bikes that carry half a dozen people. We call them a spider bike. Spider would be 8. But they're small, round, and they're very nimble.
And it's like one of your employees is on there.
Our driver. Yep.
Your driver. He's steering.
And braking.
That's important. Yes. And there's anywhere from I guess a handful to 15 or up to 14 people. 14 plus the driver.
15 plus the driver.
Oh, 15 plus the driver. Right.
Yep.
Pedaling around town. It's a fascinating idea. I confess I haven't done it, but I'd love to. My girlfriend the other day says to me though, it just doesn't seem like something I'd want to do while I'm drinking. It seems like a lot of work. And I told her, I said, you know what? I had lunch with Mike the other day, and business is apparently booming. So, and I've never seen them not be full.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they're always, they seem like they're overflowing. So you've got a lot of rabid fans of Cleveland cycle tours that love this thing.
Yeah, it's worked out very well. Probably our number one demographic are bachelorette parties. It is very popular for that. We do a lot of birthday parties. The one area that's growing for us, they're all still growing for us, but the one that's growing most right now for us that we're looking to build even bigger are the corporate team building outings. It's great for a department to come out with their employees, and we'll do team building games for them and the whole bit. And we do a lot of family outings too. Our main gig, people will come to us because they want to do a pub crawl, but we do family outings too, where we'll stop at Edison's for pizza and Mitchell's ice cream and make it a family day too. It doesn't have to involve alcohol. But the alcohol, there's an interesting aspect to that as well. When we first got the bikes, you could not have alcohol on the bikes. And we worked together with the couple who ran the business in Columbus and the two gentlemen who ran a similar business in Cincinnati. And we worked and advocated with the General Assembly, and were able to get inserted into an entertainment district bill a portion that changed the open container law in Ohio to allow open container of beer and wine only on any commercial pedal-powered quadricycle that carries 5 or more people.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know how it's any different than a party bus, right? Yeah. If they can have it,
right,
which they do, I don't know why you wouldn't be able to have it for here. Yeah. But
so that was passed in 2015, and that changed the landscape.
So which also makes sense because until you came along, there wasn't that kind of commercial need for it.
No.
So that's just the law changing with innovation, I guess, right?
Right.
What have been some good learning experiences you've had owning and growing this business?
Ooh, boy, a lot of them. Because, number one, like you alluded to, we were totally breaking new ground. In the city of Cleveland, we're still covered under the horse and carriage ordinance. They didn't know where to put us. We were a square peg looking to be put into a round hole somewhere.
I think they still call it livery, right?
They do.
I think it's still like the livery statute.
Yeah. Every year when we do our application, we have to put, they ask who our veterinarian is, NA, not applicable, and where we stable our horses. I think if there are some things that we didn't do well, some that we still don't do particularly well. I'm not particularly good at marketing. I think we still need to get stronger in the marketing area. It's been a challenge, constant challenge of finding garage space for us to operate out of that's convenient to our routes. It took quite a while to get routes down that were not interfering with the neighbors. We tried. We wanted to be able to operate in a fashion where we were going back into the neighborhoods so that we were giving people a flavor for the neighborhood, taking them past the house where John Heisman was born, taking them past the church that was part of the Underground Railroad, and really make a tour where we could explain things of Cleveland to people. Unfortunately, what that did was take us past people's houses, and when you have a bike full of 15 people who are drinking, even if you turn down the music and all of that, they still can make quite a bit of noise, and so we didn't want to interfere with the neighborhood, but unknowingly we were interfering with the neighborhood, and we needed to find the right type of route so that we didn't have that happen. We never had an issue downtown, but Ohio City and Tremont was different, and that needed to be handled differently. We've finally found routes that work well. We stay more essentially on the main streets. In Ohio City, we're staying on West 25th and Lorraine and a little bit of Detroit. In Tremont, we're staying on Professor, and we're staying on Abbey and roads like that.
Gosh, that seems crazy. It's one vehicle with 15 people on it, and the fact that you would have, I guess I'm surprised that people were complaining about it. And is it like the one house on the street that complains about everything?
Well, and that's what I was going to say. It was a minority of people complaining, but that's all yes, loudly. And once you get attention of a councilman or the neighborhood group, et cetera, and we want to be good neighbors.
Sure.
And you're right. It's one bike, but it's really more than that. We're running 6 bikes now. And, each bike only comes by every 2 hours. But if you're on a Saturday and you got 2 or 3 bikes coming by every couple hours.
Yeah. Did you meet with the neighbors and ask them what would be acceptable to them?
We tried at times, sometimes more successfully than others. And we tried making, turning down the music, reminding people on the bike that they, have to quiet down. Yeah. It's tough to do, people, once as alcohol gets into their system, they change a little bit.
Let's shift hats a little bit here. You've been really active in local entrepreneurial organizations. COSE obviously is where I met you.
Yes.
Right. You were the chairman of the board when I joined the board. You asked me to join the board, and I feel like you must have been kicking yourself ever since.
How far from it.
Regretting it. But what a great organization. And folks, listening to this, if you are a business owner and you either haven't heard of COSE or have heard of it but haven't jumped with both feet into it, you need to take a good hard look, because it is probably the organization in Cleveland that gives the most benefit and the most value and the most bang for your buck to small businesses. That's COSE, and then the larger businesses would be looking to the Greater Cleveland Partnership.
Right.
And you have served in some capacity in both organizations, yes?
And currently am.
Right.
Still,
and you still are. Okay.
Correct.
So why did you get involved? When did you get involved? And what has that journey been like for you?
It's been great. I like you. I love COSE. It stands for Council of Smaller Enterprises. I first got involved back in 2010. I was finishing up 9 years as a city councilman in Avon Lake, and had been a councilman in Fairview Park prior to that, and had just reached a point where I felt I needed to put my energies elsewhere. I decided not to run for re-election, and there was an opening on the COSE Advocacy Committee, advocating with governmental entities on behalf of small business. And so I put my name in for that role. I was fortunate enough to have been selected to be a member of the Advocacy Committee within COSE, and ended up a couple years later chairing the Advocacy Committee. Was elected to the board of directors, and then eventually, as you had mentioned, became chairman of the board. It's been great all along the way. The advocacy portion is still, I guess, my bread and butter, where my heart really is. I still serve on what's now the Small Business Caucus of the Government Affairs Council of the Greater Cleveland Partnership. I've been on that since, like I said, 2010, and continue to enjoy doing that and trying to help governmental entities, both or local, state, and national, do things in a way that allows small businesses to operate freely, and to help build that economic engine that only small businesses can do in this country.
Why is that a challenge?
Well, it's a challenge because it's everybody, every governmental agency, every governmental elected official loves small business. They all speak greatly about small business, but in the end, they don't. It's not always taken into account when legislation is being passed, particularly when rules are being passed. So many challenges with, a new law will be passed. They'll have rules associated with it that doesn't necessarily take into account the fact that the impact on a small business can be a lot greater than a large business, because a large business will have a legal department, an HR department, a finance department that can, address these reports or what have you that need to be done. Whereas at a small business, quite often is one person wearing many of those hats.
Yeah. The bigger business can definitely absorb change better. And react to it better when they have all those other resources.
Absolutely.
Can you remember a time when you felt your advocacy to have had palatable, tangible impact that you could see out in the streets?
Personally, the liquor law change for the bites was a great example for me. But we were fortunate in getting some changes to the successor liability on workers' comp in the state of Ohio.
Talk about that.
When you took over a location, like a restaurant would come in, take over a spot that used to be a restaurant, they would have to take that liability that had existed previously,
that rating,
yep, as their own rating, even though they're a totally different entity. And the reason that they did that was because were some bad apples who would just change ownership constantly, and to try to get out from under a bad rating. And we were able to work and get some things changed in Columbus on that one. Right now, the one that we're working on very hard is the tax preference for small business owners, pass-through entities at the state level, where the first $250,000 is tax exempt and the remainder is taxed at a 3% level. which allows the small business owner then to invest that money back in the business. And it's been shown time and again that small business owners do that. They put the money back into their business to grow the business,
sure,
and build that economic engine. And that's at risk right now. The State House has removed it from the budget. The State Senate has put it back in, and they're in conference committee right now as we speak, trying to determine what the final outcome of that will be.
When will you know?
By June 17th.
Is there anything that people... Wait, June 17th?
July 17th.
Okay, so this...
I'm living in the past.
That's okay. Well, so this episode will probably be released after that. So we will have an update on the website. I love hearing that, Mike, because... And I mean, this all goes hand in hand with all the other work that you do at COSE, which goes to help small businesses in so many ways, in the sense that I'm a small business owner, and I would say half of our clients are small business owners. And one thing that I know, and this was one of the biggest reasons I joined the board of COSE a few years ago, was it's so isolating, right? You're out on your own in so many ways. Maybe you have a partner, and then it's just you and your partner out on your own, but your employees can't relate to you in a lot of ways. People who don't know the stress of trying to make payroll can't relate to you. People who don't know the stress of getting a bill from a vendor that was totally unexpected, and it comes in and it's like a punch in the gut because it was not budgeted, and now you're wondering, all right, well, did I screw up? Did he screw up? But here's now this bill that you're ultimately responsible for as the owner, in the sense that if it doesn't get paid, there could be a lawsuit, whatever. But there are these personal experiences, these personal journeys that small business owners go through that that anyone who's not ever been one can't relate to. You need that network, and you need that advocate in Columbus, and you need support, because it feels like you are hanging on by yourself so often.
Quite often. And you know, the old saying that, you know, life changes when you start signing the front of the check,
right,
not just the back of the check.
That's right. That's exactly right.
You know, most small businesses, especially when they're first starting out, you know, they've got, if maybe they're a solopreneur, maybe they don't have any employees, or they've got a couple of employees. Those people don't have a board of advisors that they can turn to. You know,
right.
If they're lucky, they've got a good attorney who also supplies them with some business advice. You can bounce things off of him or her. But quite often, you're right, they have nobody. And having an organization where you can go and meet other like-minded people,
right, and
share some of the challenges and various potential solutions, et cetera, it can be a godsend.
Yeah. Cannabis, let's talk about it. Why did you get involved? How did you get involved? What has that process looked like? Where are we now?
So I first got involved 3 years ago. We had an issue 3 or whatever, that was going to be a potential marijuana, but it was going to be for a small group of people who were going to be controlling the all of the growing and everything else. And I had spoken up at some of the Government Affairs Council meetings that Greater Cleveland Partnership had in opposition to that, and had expressed that. Once the state then passed the medical marijuana legislation, that legislation called for a board of a medical marijuana advisory committee to be formed, a 14-member body. And one of those members was an individual to represent employers across the state. So the people at Greater Cleveland Partnership asked me if I would be interested in taking on that role, if they could help me secure that appointment to that particular position.
And did you have any interest in the subject before that, or was this just somebody asked you to take the seat and you said okay?
Well, no, I had the interest when that not levied, when that state issue was on, and they were trying to pass the marijuana.
Okay.
And that issue got defeated. And after that issue was defeated, then the state legislature passed to try to avoid having another recreational marijuana ballot issue. They passed the medical marijuana legislation to try to.
So you were already sort of observing and
Exactly.
curious and interested as sort of just a reader at that point.
Right.
You weren't really involved in it. You
Right.
were just curious about it.
Correct, and more from the employer stance. A lot of people hear that I'm on the Medical Marijuana Advisory Committee. They think I'm a pro marijuana, and you can be pro or negative. You go on there, you kind of go in with an open mind. But my personal feeling is that we've kind of opened up Pandora's box, and I'm not particularly in favor. In fact, I'm not. But the law is what the law is. And so the role that had been asked to take on was to represent the employers, and what's contained in the legislation is that employers have the ability to have a drug-free workplace policy that will supersede their employees' ability to participate in the medical marijuana program. And I thought it important for employers to be able to maintain that right, particularly when I look at my Hunt Imaging business, where we're working with heavy machinery, and to have an employee in there who does not have full faculties about him or her would be very challenging from potential issues of safety for them and for their co-workers.
And that's you and 13 other board members?
Correct.
What role does that board have relative to the law?
So we are strictly an advisory committee. So we are not a rule-making committee. The law is being implemented and the rules are being established by 3 different governmental agencies: the Department of Commerce, the State Pharmacy Board, and the State Medical Board. So our role, we meet monthly down in Columbus, is to advise them on implementation, on the rules, on the regulations, sharing with them things that are important to our individual constituency, or things that we've heard from people that are working or not working. And they typically will give us updates on where they're at, and we'll provide them feedback on the path that they're taking.
What's that path look like today? So there's the law has been established.
Correct.
They have issued a number of licenses in each of the 4, I guess, within the vertical, right, from grower to grower, cultivator, processor, dispensary?
Grower, cultivator, the cultivator, the processors, the labs, and the dispensaries.
Okay. And there are regulations affecting each of those, and you have had a voice in what those regulations should say.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. There's everything from the application process to the process of inspections to the granting of the final license to the fees, et cetera.
I had heard somewhere that there was sort of a bottleneck in some of the levels of licensing because of, I can't remember why. But was there a bottleneck at some point, and is there still?
Yeah, there was, and there is. The program is rolling out slower than anticipated, and it got a late start. I believe it was supposed to be out by September of 2018. The first product actually hit a dispensary in January of 2019. Okay. Currently, we got out of the processors, we got the cultivators, 17 out of 30 are up and running.
Okay.
Presently.
Are the cultivators the growers?
The growers.
Okay.
Correct. So we have 17 out of 30 of them operating. We only have, this debt is about 30 days old. 4 processors operating out of 39 licenses that have been awarded. So they're just, struggling. Sometimes it's been a variety of challenges. Either sometimes they have not followed through on things that they said that they were going to do in their application, which they have to follow the application to a T. They've run into local issues with local building codes and that type of thing. There are 3 labs are up and running out of 5 for testing, and only 18 dispensaries at this point out of 56 that have been approved.
So you talked about what your concerns were for employers.
Correct.
And how have those concerns been addressed?
Well, they're addressed in the legislation, and so, I'm just making sure that stays in there.
Well, I guess what I meant was an employer right now does not have to allow an employee to, to come to work with marijuana in their system.
Correct.
Despite the fact that the law says that employee may possess it.
Correct.
And this is where I should bring Nick Weiss in too, because he practices in this area.
That's right. I forgot about
Nick.
that. Yes.
But there has to be overlap with Americans with Disability Act rights, although I would imagine since the federal government doesn't recognize medical marijuana as a right, the ADA itself presumably does not consider the refusal to permit medical marijuana on the premises, for example, or to be used. The ADA isn't implicated, presumably.
Yeah, I don't believe that they are. No.
Okay. All right. And Nick, if I'm wrong about that, you'll have to come on for a follow-up interview. Nick should be kicking me under the table right now for even speaking intelligently on this issue. You know more about it than I do, Mike. So speaking now to the employers out there, right? What should they know? What were your concerns and how were they addressed? Other than just for being an employer being forced to allow somebody to use medical marijuana while on the job.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would recommend to any employer that they seek out legal counsel on to go through their drug-free workplace policy. Hopefully they have a drug-free workplace policy. If they don't, they need to have one in place.
Yeah.
And
get a little closer.
And make sure that drug-free workplace policy is one that will hold up if challenged.
Right.
And that's another challenge for small businesses is keeping their policy manuals current. Boy, that's just an ever-present thorn.
Yeah. It is one of the fastest-growing parts of this law firm.
I'm sure.
It's Cover My Six. It is. Well, and this really brings it all full circle, right? Because the politically expedient thing to do for a lot of politicians is to say, workers' rights and more regulation and more safety requirements and more anti-discrimination laws. And those things are all great in concept. Philosophically, we all agree that workers should have rights and that employers shouldn't discriminate and that there should be safety requirements. Everyone agrees with that, but it's in the details where the burden often becomes too burdensome and unfair to the employer. And if that employer doesn't have a Mike Stanek or a COSE or some advocate out there helping to at least give them a seat at the table, then what you've got is either politically expedient rules going into effect that don't have any real bearing on reality, or a lot of people writing rules who have never been business owners.
Right.
And that gets back to us being out there on our own sometimes.
And any small business owner doesn't have the time nor the clout to make an impact him or herself. That's why it's so important for those business owners to belong to a COSE or Greater Cleveland Partnership or National Small Business Association, and to the power of numbers, and let that participate as an individual with that group speaking for thousands of individuals.
Yeah. Mike, are you ready for the lightning round?
I could probably not be ready. I've lost 2 nights' sleep over the lightning round. So
it's not that bad. It's not that bad. All right. If Molly Gebler were sitting right here, she would have her lightning round questions, and I will have mine. So I'll have Molly's go first. But before we start the lightning round, we're going to take a short break and come right back. Hey folks, Alex Gertsburg here. I am CEO of the Gertsburg Law Firm and Cover My Six. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I wanted to take a quick second to tell you about something special we're doing at Cover My Six. If you own or run a business, I want you to go to CoverMy6.com to see if you qualify for a no-cost business vulnerability assessment. My business lawyers will meet with you in person, go over your customer contract, your employee handbook, and your other key legal documents, and help you spot any legal minefields that they see. We'll also give you some guidance on how to stop those minefields from blowing up your business. So go to CoverMy6.com to see if you qualify and to sign up. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of the show. All right. Molly Gebler's first lightning round question is, what are you binging these days?
Ooh, what am I binging? Podcasts.
Ooh,
very honest,
is that right?
Very honestly.
Wow.
I just got into podcasts probably a couple months ago.
Huh. What are your favorites?
I am loving Business Wars. I'm loving The Moth.
Ooh, The Moth is great.
And I just got turned on to and am loving
Best.Podcast.Ever.
Best.Podcast.Ever.
Right.
And one more, which is Freakonomics.
Ooh, Freakonomics is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that one.
So I'm relatively new to it, but really enjoying it.
Yeah. There's these 2 NPR ones. One is Radiolab, which
I've heard of Radiolab.
That's a great one. And then the other is This American Life, which was always on NPR forever. But now
I've heard of that also. I've not listened to those.
Form. Yeah, those are amazing. Okay. A perfect day for Mike Stanek is?
A day where I have had a good night's sleep the night before. I'm up about 6 and am totally active till about 11 at night.
That's a perfect day for you, huh?
Perfect day.
No relaxation in there. No sitting on the beach.
I can't sit on a beach. It's alien to me. My wife would love to be a beach vacation person, but we don't. I don't do that. I've never really learned to relax. I mean, some things I enjoy playing euchre. I enjoy playing cornhole. I still play a couple of softball teams, so I do that. But
when you play euchre, do you play with the pizza rule? Do you know the pizza rule?
No.
That's if you beat the other side 10-0, they owe you a large pizza.
Oh,
you guys don't
we have
do
to implement that. No, our battle is always: are we going to play stick the dealer or not?
Oh, you got to play stick the dealer.
Game keeps the game moving.
Yeah. Well, it's just kind of like it's an aggressive way to play.
That's true too.
So what are you doing before 6 a.m.? You said you wake up at 5 and you're active from 6 to...
No, I wake up at 6.
Oh, you wake up
I'm
at
active
6.
right away. Yeah, no, I'm
right
not one of these 5:30 at the gym kind of guys.
Yeah, no. That's...
My gym workouts are usually late afternoon.
And so you sleep from 11 to 6 pretty consistently?
Well, I'm in bed from 11 to 6. I wish I could sleep the whole time.
You know what?
I'm old now.
I have become obsessed with sleeping 8 hours a day, and I don't succeed in that, but I create conditions for it because I find that if I can get close to it, there are tangible consequences in the following day, depending on how close I get to it.
I can believe that. They say that that's in like an ideal amount.
Yeah. So one thing that I do, so do you wake up at 6 with an alarm clock?
No.
You just
no
your body automatically.
I have no problem falling asleep, and I have no problem being up at 6. The problem is I'm quite often,
I'm the same way.
Up in between.
What do you do when you wake up in the middle of the night?
Usually I just toss and turn. I'm not one that I don't eat or anything like that. Sometimes I'll change if it's particularly bad, or if I'm bothering my wife too much. All the kids except one are out of the house now, so we have a guest room, and so maybe I'll go down to a guest room and try to just change venue. But it's tough.
Do you meditate at all?
I've got a meditation app as well.
Those apps don't do you any good if you're not using
meditate.
them. Yeah.
I've tried meditation. I don't find I'm particularly good at it, or that it does much for me. But they say even 10 minutes is supposed to be pretty good for you.
Yes. As it relates to sleep, so I've been meditating pretty consistently for about 10 years.
Do you do it when you get up in the morning?
Usually.
I've heard a positive comments about that.
Well, not right when I get up, but I have a workout meditation routine that lasts 45 minutes to 60 minutes.
Wow.
And there's there have definitely been tangible results for me almost immediately. But as it relates to sleep, how it's helped me is it has helped me train my attention so that when my mind is wandering, which is all the time, or chattering or judging, which is all the time, I think because of my meditation practice, am more able to give full attention to my breathing. And there's 100 different parts to your breathing if you wanted to break it down.
Right. And
that makes it much easier to not follow all of those random trains of thought, the monkey mind that keeps you awake in the middle of the night. So I definitely have slept better because of meditation, but it's not for everyone. Lots of people I know say the exact same thing. It's just not for me.
Okay.
But if you figured it out, it would help you sleep better.
I have no doubt.
Okay, Molly's next. The irony of the lightning round is it's never quick.
Okay.
So Molly's next lightning round question is, Mike Stanek, what's on your mind?
Too much. Too much. Boy, things. My mother's in an Alzheimer's facility, trying to figure out all that kind of stuff. Still have get rid of her condo. How do I turn the curve on a couple of these businesses and solidify them? Helping get a couple kids that are living out of town, and trying to help them with some things in their life. What's on my mind? Stock market. Been looking for some new stock tips. So trying to figure out what's going to happen with this economy. Is the market going to keep going up, or is it going to implode here? Got some cash. Do I wait to invest it, or do I put it in now? So anyone out there listening that's a broker with a great tip, feel free to email me.
I agree with the first thing you said. It's too much.
Yeah.
I think you need to meditate.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. We had a guest on a while ago. She's a journalist. Her name is Christy George, and we named a lightning round question after her called the Christy. This is the Christy. If you could interview anyone in the entire world who has ever lived, who would it be?
I'm thinking it would be Warren Buffett.
For those stock tips?
Well, yeah, that wouldn't be bad. But, the guy, he just seems to have it figured out. He's extremely successful business person. He's going to be has given away billions already. He's going to be giving away billions more for philanthropic purposes. He leads a very simple life. and it just seems to be brighter than heck.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to delve into that mind a little bit.
What would if you had one question you could ask him? What would you ask him? Because he's listening. Warren,
Yeah.
listen up. This is important.
How does he keep things in perspective?
Ooh, that's a great question. Yeah, I'd like to know that too. He's very stoic. He's very essentialist, right? I can only presume that he has just a really good grasp on what the most important things in his life are, right? I'd like to know that same answer. Okay, here are my lightning round questions. You are shipwrecked on a desert island for a minimum of 3 months, but possibly for the rest of your life. You have no idea. You may bring with you any single musician's entire discography, and that is all you could bring from a music perspective. Who is the musician?
That might be Boz Scaggs.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is that bluegrass?
More jazz.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've not heard that one on the lightning round before. That's a Boz Scaggs. You must be a fan.
I am. One of the best concerts I ever saw was called the Dukes of September. Down, they had it at Nautica. It was Boz Scaggs, Michael McDonald, and Donald Fagen, and they did all did individual sets, and then they did some collaborative sets. And boy, Scaggs just has a unique voice. His songs are very introspective, and he's got a nice mellow melody to most of them.
Does he have any connection in Nashville?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm sure he doesn't, and I don't know where I got that from. But speaking of Nashville, because I brought it up and I have ADD, have you ever been there?
No.
We were just down there, and they don't have the I didn't see the cycles, but you know what they have that you should consider bringing to Cleveland? Electric scooters, everywhere, all over the city.
Oh, like the Bird and those?
No, like just the the scooters.
Yeah.
One,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
The Bird is one of the
is that
makers
a brand?
of their scooters.
Oh
yeah.
No.
Yeah. So they were here in Cleveland and got thrown out.
I heard that.
And then they just passed some, or in the process of passing some new ordinance that will allow them back
Boy,
in.
I hope they do.
Yeah.
I hope they do. We were debating when we were down there. We're going totally off track here, but whether what the narratives surrounding these things were, politically. Like, one narrative is, well, they're just going to make people lazy, or they're going to be dangerous and people are going to get hit by cars. But then the other narrative is, well, we'll use less gas and people will drive less, and also people will get to work faster in some ways, right? And or shopping, or just get and we were my girlfriend and I used the scooters there for a day and a night, and we wanted to stay longer because of it. It was so much fun, and it has an Uber app on it, so
Yep.
you just log where you pick up your scooter and when you stop, and boy, they were so much fun. I hope somebody brings them to Cleveland, and I hope you're part of that, Mike, because you can make that happen.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. It's big in Washington D.C. They're everywhere now.
They're everywhere. Yeah.
And the new Cleveland ordinance, and I'm not going to remember all the specifics, but they can only be on streets that go up to 25 miles an hour. I think no streets that have a
really?
speed limit greater than that. And they have to have a governor on them to keep them at a no greater than a certain traveling speed, which I forget what that is, and some other rules.
Interesting.
Yeah, but they do have 3 companies in Nashville that run the bikes that we run. 3 separate companies.
Really?
It's a huge bachelorette.
Yeah, I'm not surprised
area.
at all. Yeah. Oh, what a great city. We had the best time. Okay. you are still shipwrecked on that same desert island for the same amount of time, which is unknown, but anywhere between 3 months and the rest of your life. And you may bring with you any single author's entire bibliography. Mm-hmm. Who's the author?
Interesting. I don't do a lot of reading any longer.
Could be audiobooks.
Yeah, just had someone in mind. Leo Buscaglia.
Leo Buscaglia.
It's Buscaglia. He was a professor out in California, and he was known as it's Dr. Buscaglia. He was known as Dr. Love. He preached, or he taught about and lectured about love and happiness and that type of thing.
And this is the person whose bibliography you will take with you on this island and only read or listen to this person's books for the rest of your life, potentially.
Yeah, he's got about 8 books, I think.
Wow.
And they're very, very potent.
Deep.
They are.
Dense. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. I pride myself on being pretty well read, Mike, and I've known every author that anyone has ever answered that question with until today, until just now.
I'll have to send you a copy.
I'm going to look it up. All right, Mike, what is a habit or routine that you do on a regular basis from which you have gotten the most mileage?
I would say, and this isn't something I did all my life, but listening more than talking.
That's a good one.
I try very hard now, and sometimes it'll drive my wife batty if we're in a meeting together, but I will just let people talk, and I'm not afraid to let there be those 15 or 20 seconds or 30 seconds of silence when they're waiting for you to, and just let them continue. And some funny, the information that people are willing to share if you let them talk and don't talk over them.
I would imagine that's fantastic, and you just reminded me. I actually have that written down as something I need to be much better at. And I wrote it down to remind me throughout the day that I need to do that more. When I deconstruct that, it strikes me as being able to control really 2 things. One is your ego, which makes you think that you need to be heard, and 2 is your reactivity, right? You're just, there's that gap that you feel you need to fill as soon as the other person stops talking, and that instinctual reactivity, because conversation is a social skill, and you talk, then I talk. You go, now I go, right? It is a constant give and take, and the natural instinct I think that most people have is to say something as soon as the other person stops talking. But you definitely hear more when you wait a little longer, I think. But controlling those 2 actions, or I guess, I don't know, whatever your ego is, controlling those 2 things does not come naturally.
Particularly, I believe, for like you and I, entrepreneurs.
Right.
We're used to having to react quickly and be decisive, and we're not wired to naturally want to just hold back a little bit.
Yeah, and you also get a lot of really interesting thoughts from other people when you pause, even though it's uncomfortable and awkward, I find. That's probably the part that drives your wife crazy, right? Say something.
Yeah. She wants to have that gap filled, and particularly if you're in a negotiation.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best thing you can say is nothing, and
right,
because then they're trying to read what's there.
Yeah. I have to tell you, that is another. I don't want to speak too much about meditation, but that is also another benefit of it for me, is hearing your inner monologue without making it your outer monologue, right? But observing your thoughts. And it doesn't have to be just meditation, by the way. I mean, just any mindfulness practice, any prayer practice that people have where you observe your thoughts without becoming one with your thoughts. You know, I heard or read some authors say that if your inner voice was your roommate, you would murder him because he's always chattering and he's always judging, you know. But being able to step back and hear that, and some people say that talker is your ego. I don't know, but being able to step back and listen to the talker without being the talker in your mind, that is that same skill that you would definitely need to be able to really master the art of listening more than speaking. Yeah. It would seem. But I could see what you mean by by that being a skill that has given you a lot of mileage.
Yeah, it has paid off, and it has also helped me too. In fact, I'm not a particularly good conversationalist.
I totally disagree.
Thank you, but I don't consider myself a good conversationalist at all. But by listening and asking questions of people perceive me to be a good conversationalist because it gives them, they have an opportunity to share things, and so they feel engaged in that interaction. But it's really more them having that interaction than both of us.
Interesting. Okay, Mike. Your final lightning round question is...
Is the 100-point bonus question?
This has a bonus component to it. Yeah. What is an embarrassing thing about yourself that very few people know? And for extra credit, as a bonus, that no one else knows. Very few people get to that bonus question, so I'm very curious what's going to come out right here.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of an open book. I don't know if there's anything that no one else knows. Because I'm just pretty open. These are many embarrassing things. One of them is that at 59 years of age, I'm still a nail biter. Still bite my nails, and that's been my whole life. I've never smoked, so I guess if I had to do one or the other, I guess nail biting is probably a little bit better for me.
Yeah.
The most embarrassing recent was when I had some of the grandkids over for 4th of July. I actually ended up shooting a bottle rocket at myself inadvertently.
Were you injured?
No, a little burn on my arm, but nothing significant. But they were telling everyone at church the following day, apparently, what Grandpa did.
That's a very Grandpa thing to do. By the way, I will stand up for nail biters everywhere and say that I don't think that should be embarrassing. Okay. I think that if I think nail biting should be something that anyone, so long as you're not spitting them out at other people, right? And yes, some people get annoyed by people who bite their nails. I suppose as a courtesy to those people, maybe not do it around them, but I bite my nails, and I have no problem telling the world about it. And I think that I speak for a lot of them. You know what? I even wonder if there are more nail biters than non-nail biters out there. Or just like closeted nail biters.
When you said that, I was kind of wondering the same thing. Maybe there's more out there than I realized.
I don't think you should be embarrassed by that, Mike. I think you should be a proud nail biter.
Okay, there we go.
All right, Mike Edwin Stanek, that was a good interview. I declare this podcast officially a success.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for joining us. Now,
very enjoyable.
Is there anything that you're currently working on? Any news? Any alerts? Any updates? Anything that you want to get out to the universe before we leave?
At the moment, a couple of other businesses looking at relatively strongly right now, but
non-public.
Yeah, nothing ready to pull the trigger on or let out of the bag where it might be grabbed.
All right. Well, I will throw a couple things out there. So first of all, folks, if you've listened this long, then that means that you are Mrs. Stanek. So thank you, Mrs. Stanek. We appreciate it. Or if you are one of the other 1,500, we're up to like 1,500 downloads a month.
Fabulous,
Mike. Yeah, we're actually really proud of that. Molly and I started this experimentally 93 episodes ago.
Wow.
Yeah, and the test we decided that the test for being a guest on the podcast was that you had to be someone who impacted either a large number of people or deeply with a small number of people. Right. And so you are definitely that, for sure. With your advocacy work, your business ownership, your work with COSE and the GCP, you definitely check all those boxes. So
thank you.
But yeah, we're really proud of this podcast. So if you have listened this far and you are not Mrs. Stanek, whatever you're listening to us on probably provides you with the ability to leave us a review or a rating or some other expression of positive feelings. So do that. That would be great. Secondly, if you are a business owner, go to covermy6.com. You know about Cover My Six, right, Mike?
Absolutely.
We've put on there, Mike, a self-assessment. You should do it, Mike. You should get back when you get back to your desk at Hunt. It's 10 questions, and you fill out. You check boxes whether you do or do not do the things that it's asking you about, and see how you score. And you get a lot of really good free legal information there. While you're at covermy6.com, you should check out Gertsburglaw.com, and there's a bunch of really great blogs and tips on how to stay out of court. And lastly, every Tuesday and Thursday, we at the Gertsburg Law Firm sponsor for the entire summer free concerts here in Chagrin Falls and around the Chagrin Valley. And so, folks, what you want to do there is go to cvcc.org, which is the Chagrin Valley Chamber of Commerce. And, Mike, we'll be seeing you hopefully next Thursday. This Thursday. Yeah, so that'll be this podcast will have dropped after that, but this Thursday, that's right. We're sponsoring it along and bringing a lot of COSE guests on. But it's really cool. Have you seen any of the concerts?
I have not. I'm a typical West Sider that doesn't come east very often.
This is one of the 3 times this year you will be this far east. I know. But folks, every Tuesday and every Thursday, we have brought really amazing bands all over town. Every Thursday night, it's in the Triangle on Main Street in Chagrin Falls from 7 to 9. And every Tuesday, it's in one of the other communities like Bainbridge or Auburn or Orange or what's the other one? I always forget it.
Bentleyville.
Bentleyville. Thank you. Sorry, Bentleyville folks. Yeah, no, it's cvcc.org tells you where it is on Tuesday nights and who's playing on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but you should definitely go because it's fun, it's free, and I'm sponsoring it. So go. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time. Mike, thank you very much. That was awesome.
Totally my pleasure.
P. Weiss.
That is me.
We are here to talk about employers in the age of cannabis law in the state of Ohio. And you've got, at this point, a fair amount of exposure to this. You are an instructor at the Cleveland School of Cannabis. Needless to say, you're pretty immersed in the current state of the law in Ohio. So I'm an employer. Tell me what I need to know about medical marijuana law.
Sure. So medical marijuana in Ohio is intentionally drafted in the statute, and this was some really good lobbying from some solid business organizations, including COSE, of which we're a member here, and some members there, to protect employers as this medical marijuana rollout happened, as this medical marijuana scheme. So under Ohio's medical marijuana law, there are explicit protections for employers who craft their own drug policy, and that can be ranging from zero tolerance, which is the most common, to any kind of exceptions, and they will be allowed explicitly under this law to take disciplinary actions up into including termination for employees who are utilizing medical marijuana. So the upshot of that is if you have an employee who is lawfully using medical marijuana, that is, they've gone to a doctor, they've gotten a medical recommendation, they've gone lawfully through an Ohio dispensary, you can prohibit that. If you have an ethical objection to marijuana in the workplace or even in private usage, you are allowed to create and craft a policy that allows you to terminate that individual. And there's no recourse for the employee. So for a lot of the anti-discrimination laws, including Ohio's and including the federal laws under the Americans with Disabilities Act, if you have an employee who has a qualifying disability, an actual medical condition, and they're taking medicine for that, including some really significant medicine, significant painkillers, stuff that can mess with an employee's mind, you are limited in the actions that you can take for that employee taking that medicine. So, you can prohibit them from using that medicine or those opiates while on the job if they're using machinery or stuff like that. But generally, you couldn't terminate for that. You couldn't discipline for that. There are protections under the Americans with Disabilities Act that prohibit you from doing that. With marijuana, even medical marijuana, even lawful medical marijuana, those protections don't exist.
So you've got more rights as an employer relative to an employee's use on the job or possession of medical marijuana than you would relative to their use or possession of other prescribed drugs.
That's exactly right. If someone brings OxyContin on the job and they have a prescription for that, you can have a general policy about that, but if they need that to manage pain, there are limitations on what you can do to even prohibit that, within the workplace. And that doesn't exist with marijuana. Marijuana is still a federally illegal substance. Trump's state law on that, it is federally illegal. So any kind of legislation that would protect its use and punish employers who want to take action against people using a federally illegal substance doesn't work. Now, I want to qualify this because there have already been challenges here. So I don't want employers to be under the impression that, okay, we've got this state law that says I'm not liable, and we've got this federal law that says marijuana has no medical benefit, so I can ban it. I don't want them to be under the impression that they're not going to get a lawsuit.
Right.
Plaintiffs' lawyers are creative. They come up with new ways to find ways to sue businesses under the ADA or Ohio's equivalent under the Ohio Civil Rights Scheme. But the takeaway for employers should be, while there's always the risk of that, frivolous lawsuit for prohibiting medical marijuana at the workplace, you have prescribed by statute protections that are going to be hard bars or hopefully hard bars if you want to take some disciplinary action against employees who do that.
Nick, what are the best practices for the employer? So we've talked about their rights, we've talked about policies. Should they have written policies? How should they be written? How should they be distributed? Talk about that.
Sure, and this is very important. And if I can have only one takeaway on this, it would be have a policy and enforce it consistently. And that's not only just for your own individual benefit, to make sure that you have something, that it's organized, that you have a process and a system. I'm talking about liability. I'm talking about numerous cases that have been brought because an employer was enforcing a policy inconsistently. So you have, for example, one employee who breaks your drug policy, and you either give them no discipline or you give them a slap on the wrist. And then you have another employee who violates that same policy, who is a member of protected class, either by race or by gender or what have you, and you give them a different disciplinary action. Okay? Maybe it's an illegal substance, a purely illegal substance. Let's say it's cocaine on this to make it an easier analogy. You have now enforced that policy in what is per se, on its face, a discriminatory manner. So it's not good enough for you to say, well, okay, I can do whatever I want with marijuana. If you don't have that written policy and you're not enforcing it consistently, what you're doing is you're still opening yourself up to liability, particularly on allegations of race-based discrimination, gender-based discrimination, or even disability discrimination. If you get an employee and you believe them that their use of medical marijuana is fine, and then someone else comes in and you say, you know what, I'm not sure that that's legitimate, and you take different actions as a result, boom, you've got discrimination on the basis of disability because of how you've handled that.
Well, and borrowing, so clearly consistent interpretation and consistent implementation of any employment policy is important to avoid claims of discrimination, or at least meritorious claims of discrimination. In terms of having the policy drafted, is that, and whether or not this is self-serving, I mean, for the benefit of the employers, that's something you want to have a lawyer do.
Oh, absolutely. There are certain best practices that you can take care of, and there are certain model guides that you can take of. Ohio's Bureau of Workers' Compensation, for example, can provide you those model guides. But they're not perfect. They're meant for that purpose, to help guide an employer, particularly if they're starting out, to create a workable drug policy. As you want to make changes to that, as you want to either provide greater flexibility, particularly if you are an employer who agrees that marijuana is medicine, you're going to want to have an attorney look at that and draft that and make sure it complies. Yeah, I will say, as a matter of efficiency, the very safest thing that you can do is just to have a zero tolerance drug policy. Is just to have, we don't allow illegal substances. We don't allow the use of illegal substances, period. And there are some benefits to that. You get a discount on the premiums that you pay for the Bureau of Workers' Compensation, for example. And it's one less thing that you have to think about. A lot of employers, especially the employers that I've talked about, don't want to use that zero tolerance policy for a variety of reasons. And particularly when we're in a strong job market the way that we are right now, a lot of employers don't want to cut off their access to talent. There are talented employees out there who may be working for employers right now who use medical marijuana or even marijuana recreationally, that if you take this zero tolerance policy and you don't enforce it because you want to keep that talent, you are opening yourself up to some serious liability.
I remember a client I had maybe 6-7 years ago who asked me whether it would be difficult for him to apply and then apply, and enforce a zero tolerance policy. It was a software company, and I said, well, look at your tech support center over there and ask yourself how many of those people you'd have to fire, right, when they started taking your drug tests, right? And he said I would lose about a third of them. Yeah. And that would be the third that didn't respond fast enough to my to the policy, because another third would stop doing it, but at least 2/3 are using. So I guess that is just a cultural question you have to ask yourself as an employer. But and then the point about who should write it, usually what I tell, and tell, I'll let you react to this, Nick, when clients ask us whether we should draft a policy for them or they should pull a template off of whether it's workers' comp or some government website, usually what I tell them is, don't use us if you don't want to use us, but use a lawyer, because whatever template you're using was written by someone who knows nothing about your business. You need to talk to somebody who will ask you questions, who will learn about your business, and who will ask about your preferences. Use a lawyer, whether it's our firm or not. Use a lawyer to draft these policies. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. I mean, and you touched on this. These forms, even the Bureau of Workers' Compensation, standard policy, these are imperfect. They are one size fits all. And I use the Bureau of Workers' Compensation form and their policy really is their best case scenario. If you're not doing that, just grabbing something off Google or something like that, those forms, those policies, they're wrong a lot.
Yeah.
They don't comply with state law. They don't comply with federal law. There are different distinguishing features between Ohio, between California, between Oregon, and these online pay $10, get your form, they often do not distinguish between those very important differences in state law and in federal law. So you've got it if you do that. You have a policy, so you've done what I've asked in the first place. But you haven't consulted with anyone. You don't know how to enforce it consistently, and it's probably not a good fit for your business. And the only way that you're going to make it fit is if you get a lawyer to tailor it for your individual business.
So now, with all of that understood, Nick, so now I'm an employer and I want to allow my employees to use medical marijuana. Mm-hmm. What should I do?
Sure. Well, firstly, you need to make sure that you are not applying for any kind of federal grant. You are not applying for, you are not doing business with any kind of federal contractor, or you do not want to do work with the federal government. The reason for that being that the federal government has the Drug-Free Workplace Act, which says that it cannot provide money to businesses who don't have a zero-tolerance drug policy, who don't have one that's largely modeled on the act. And so if you want to be one of those companies that allows medical marijuana in your workplace, you have to accept, first of all, you're not going to get those grants, you're not going to get those contracts. So this piece of advice is not for you, because you should comply with the Drug-Free Workplace Act. If you don't care about that, if you don't care about government grants and you don't care about government contracts, you can craft a policy that allows for the use and possession of medical marijuana either at home or on the premises. And the models that attorneys can draw from on this are for, existing medications. When you treat marijuana the way that it is being treated now in Ohio as a medication, you just extend it from there. Percocet is probably a good analogy, even though they're very different substances. You can draft a drug policy for your workplace that allows people in pain to take painkillers, and that already exists. And with minor tailoring, you can take that drug policy and apply it to medical marijuana.
So what I'm hearing is that you should, if you want to allow your employees to be able to use medical marijuana, what we said earlier is still a good idea, right? A written policy equally enforced.
Sure.
And that policy could model the same policy you would have for use of any other controlled substance that's used for pain or any medical condition.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so long as you've got that, so long as you're enforcing it correctly. I was talking to a business here in Chagrin Falls the other day, and he was telling me that the policy that he's put in is explicitly for that purpose because he has an employee with Parkinson's who literally, as a result of his Parkinson's, cannot function without medical marijuana. If he didn't allow medical marijuana and this man to consume medical marijuana, he couldn't work for him. So for him, and I'm sure for other employers as well, allowing medical marijuana in the workplace allows other individuals who otherwise wouldn't be able to do work generally to contribute, to be employed.
This has been super informative, Nick. Thank you very much. And by the way, I asked, or I introduced you in such, it occurred to me in such an abbreviated way. Tell us what you do here at the firm.
Sure. So I am one of the business litigators here at the firm. I practice almost entirely in litigation. I do some probate administration as well. But my primary focus is representing businesses in litigation with other consumers and with other businesses in the state and federal level.
Nick, how do people get a hold of you?
Sure. Feel free to send me an email. My email address is nweiss@gertsburglaw.com, and I hope that gets plastered on the podcast. Feel free to call me directly, 440-528-1233. Happy to talk with you about any of your questions about the medical marijuana industry, about ancillary businesses, or how this new scheme is going to affect Ohio businesses going forward.
All right, folks. Hey, you will definitely be interested in the rest of this series. This is our first of 5 episodes that we're going to have with Nick, each between 10 and 20 minutes long, where we answer really important questions about Ohio cannabis law. So stay tuned. You're going to hear more from us about dispensaries, about processors, about cultivators, and about ancillary businesses. So stay tuned for the next episode of this with Nick. Nick, thank you very much.
No problem. Thanks so much, Alex.
These 10-minute legal talks are brought to you by the Gertsburg Law Firm, changing the character of the attorney-client relationship in business from a cost center to a trusted advisor, drawing from their complex litigation and transactional experiences as members of large law firms, in-house counsel, and as business owners themselves. The Gertsburg Law Firm's award-winning attorneys provide clients the benefit of business lawyers with real-life business experience in a wide variety of industries. These talks are not intended to create an attorney-client relationship or to provide legal advice. If you have questions about your particular legal situation, you should contact a legal professional. To reach one of our business law or estate planning attorneys, visit www.gertsburglaw.com or call us at 440-571-7777.